Equals London, early 1939. The rain falls in thin silver lines beneath the gas lamps as Ambassador Joseph P. Kennedy steps from his black car outside the U.S. Embassy in Grosvenor Square. Behind him, the city hums with the anxious chatter of impending war. Kennedy adjusts his hat, glancing toward the Union Jack fluttering beside the stars and stripes. He's come to represent a nation still healing from the wounds of the Great War, a nation that does not want to fight again. Inside, British officials whisper of Nazi ambitions and treaties unraveling. Kennedy's jaw tightens as he writes his first dispatch to Washington. Britain cannot endure another war. Yet beneath his careful language lingers doubt, whether his realism is caution or fear. The thunder above London seems to echo an approaching storm that no diplomacy can stop.
Months earlier, Kennedy had watched the Munich Agreement unfold, convinced appeasement would preserve a fragile peace. Now, in early March 1939, Hitler's advances in Czechoslovakia shattered that illusion. "The British won't hold," he muttered to his secretary, cigarette smoke curling above telegrams on his desk. Across the Channel, fear thickened the air like fog. His British counterparts, once confident, now spoke in hushed tones about conscription and air raid shelters. Kennedy attended receptions at Downing Street, smiling politely as Churchill's warnings grew louder in Parliament. But inside, he saw faith collapsing, the same fear that haunted him during World War I, returning like a ghost. Each report he sent home urged caution. Stay out, stay distant, stay safe. The rumble of bombers in the distance was still only practice, but soon they would come for real.
By late summer, intelligence reports spoke of the German Wehrmacht massing along the Polish border. Kennedy stood at his window as rain streaked the glass, watching Londoners move briskly through the gray mist. The city tried to maintain normalcy, concerts, cricket, and parliament debates, but anxiety rippled beneath the surface. When Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain called for readiness, Kennedy's pen hesitated above the paper. He wrote, "British morale frail, willpower uncertain." He felt the weight of his own children thousands of miles away, imagined another generation's fathers lost to Europe's madness. At receptions, polite conversation could not disguise dread. The whisper of when, not if, lingered in every corridor. The calendar pages turned toward September, and with them came an unease that diplomacy could no longer bury.
September 1st, 1939. The world changed overnight. Newswires screamed of German tanks rolling into Poland. Kennedy read the reports in silence, his face pale, the morning light slicing through the embassy blinds. Britain and France declared war 2 days later, the inevitability both feared and foreseen. Crowds filled London streets, stoic yet trembling, as air raid sirens wailed their first haunting notes. At the embassy, Kennedy telegraphed Roosevelt, "This nation stands on the brink of ruin." His staff watched him pace, torn between diplomatic restraint and personal dread. Outside, sandbags rose around Parliament, and blackout curtains swallowed the city's glow. Kennedy felt the weight of history pressing down, realizing America's distance could not remain infinite forever.
Autumn brought a chill more political than seasonal. Kennedy's radio crackled nightly with addresses from Roosevelt and Churchill. The Atlantic, once symbolic of safety, now felt like a narrow moat between two fires. America will not be drawn in, he insisted, to visiting journalists at Grosvenor Square. Yet he knew Washington was divided, hawks urging aid, doves pleading neutrality. In smoky embassy rooms, he debated policy, while London dimmed under blackout. At a dinner with the Duke of Kent, he raised a glass half-heartedly.
"Here's to peace," he murmured. Churchill, meanwhile, thundered in Parliament, his words carrying the promise of defiance. Kennedy admired his courage, but feared his optimism. The ambassador saw ruin where others saw valor. His telegrams home grew darker, an unending chorus of warnings few wanted to hear.
Winter 1939 passed without the catastrophic bombing everyone feared. It was the phony war, a deadly calm before the storm. Kennedy told coastal defenses, winds lashing his overcoat as gun crews stood by rusting barbed wire. Londoners, too, learned to wait. In Parliament, critics accused Kennedy of defeatism, labeling him out of touch. He responded, weary but unbowed, "Realism is not defeat, it's survival." Still, something in him faltered as he watched recruits marching through fog, their faces young, uncertain. He envied their conviction. That night at his desk, he scrolled a note never sent. "If this war must come, let no one say we did not try to stay its hand." The words trembled under the lamp, like the city that held its breath.
April 1940. German troops poured into Norway and Denmark. Kennedy received the news at dawn, his teacup untouched on the table. The war's stillness was shattered. London streets bristled with tension, blackout drills intensified. "This is only the beginning," Churchill declared. Yet Kennedy saw the fear in their eyes, the disbelief that Britain could fight alone. Reports of U-boat attacks rising in the Atlantic, convoys lost, cables silent. At midnight meetings, he urged Washington again for caution. No miracle will save Europe. Through his embassy windows, distant searchlights scanned the sky. The ambassador, silhouetted against them, felt both witness and prisoner to the turning tide of history.
June 1940. France fell like a fortress, with its gates left open. The shock rippled through London, eyes red, voices hoarse. Kennedy walked through Westminster, now ringed with sandbags and soldiers. "God help us," whispered a clerk as he passed. Churchill vowed to fight on, his speeches rousing the spirit of a battered empire. But Kennedy wrote home, "The end is nearer than anyone admits." His cables reached Roosevelt, who read them in silence, aware of their political weight. The ambassador felt isolated, accused of defeatism, but guided by a grim logic. The Channel, once a shield, now seemed a fragile thread. London's churches rang for the fallen, and Kennedy stared at the dark Thames, certain that the world he knew was dying.
By autumn 1940, the tension between Kennedy and Washington had become unbearable. His pessimism clashed with Roosevelt's determination to aid Britain. "You've lost faith in the cause," an aide accused. Kennedy's eyes narrowed. "I've lost faith in illusion." The Blitz now raged nightly, bombs streaking over London like falling stars. Inside the secure rooms of the embassy, glass rattled with every detonation. He refused shelter invitations, remaining at his desk as the city burned. Reporters painted him as a Cassandra, cursed to foresee disaster and be ignored. His cable slowed, his belief in diplomacy waned. For all his foresight, Kennedy could not alter destiny, only bear witness as courage and destruction twined in the same firelit sky.
Late 1940. Joseph P. Kennedy boarded a ship at Liverpool, returning to a divided America. His name now carried controversy, admired by some for his honesty, condemned by others as defeatist. As the ship pulled from dock, the haze of war stretched behind him like a curtain closing. He stared toward the gray horizon, wondering whether history would judge him harshly. His final cabling words to Washington read simply, "Britain endures, but just." Months later, Roosevelt would deliver aid with Lend-Lease, and the United States would inch closer to war. For Kennedy, the ambassador's dilemma was never merely political. It was the haunting question of how far one nation could stay neutral when the world itself was burning.